What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be unboxing the brand new Pixel 7a. So peeling off the stickers, and sliding off the lid, the first thing you see is the phone itself, of course. I got mine in this new sea color, sort of a soft and subtle baby blue that I think looks really nice. You can also get it in charcoal, which is that familiar gray-black color, snow white, and a new Google Store exclusive color, coral. Digging a little deeper in the box, there are some accessories included. The small box within the box has a unique SIM ejector tool stuck to the outside there if you need it, along with a tiny instruction booklet and some legal information. You also still get a USB-A to USB-C dongle adapter for transferring data from your old phone to this new one, amongst other uses, and a nice thick USB-C cable for charging. But unfortunately, no charging brick or wall plug. You'll have to provide that yourself. So physically, the new Pixel 7a looks obviously very familiar. Its size and design mimic last year's Pixel 6a with some very minor little changes that better align it with the Pixel 7 and Pixel 7 Pro it now stacks up against. It's once again a 6.1-inch device. That's the screen size from corner to corner. Essentially the same dimensions as the 6a all around, and still slightly smaller in size compared to the regular Pixel 7. In fact, this Pixel 7a I think is once again one of the smallest new phones on the market, at least in the Android space. Most everything nowadays seems to be 6.5 inches and above, and one thing that I always liked about the Pixel A series was its small, compact, and comfortable form factor, and that continues here with the new 7a. It's easy to handle, you don't have to stretch too far to reach the sides. It's just a really great phone to have in your hand and in your pocket. There's the same hole punch selfie camera at the top, the same noticeable side bezels all the way down, and the same bottom chin for a screen-to-body ratio of nearly 82%. Around back, while this phone does look super premium, the rear cover is once again plastic. The frame is a color-matching aluminum that also not just looks nice, but gives the phone a sturdier feel and decent weight. It's actually some 15 grams heavier this year. The camera bar or bump, whatever you want to call it, is a little less significant on this phone. The phone is IP67 water and dust resistant, which is great, nice and durable, and also now supports wireless charging as well, which we haven't really had on a Pixel A device before. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side, you'll find a SIM card tray. It's just a SIM card tray though, no expandable storage on this phone. If you want to do an eSIM, you can set that up too. On the right side, your usual power button located just above the volume buttons. Nothing really at the top besides a microphone hole and a couple antenna bars. On the bottom, the USB-C port is flanked by a primary speaker, an additional microphone. No headphone jack here, unfortunately. The secondary speaker is once again hiding within that super slim earpiece area just above the selfie camera, and around back, a dual camera lens setup with the flash that I'll talk more about in a moment. Underneath the display, we get an optical fingerprint sensor once again. I believe this setup is similar or otherwise the same as it was on the Pixel 7s. I didn't experience it being too finicky when setting it up or testing it out. I know that's been an issue in the past with these Pixel devices. It feels decent here and relatively consistent, but it's still not as fast as what we get on Samsung's flagships, for example. And there's Face Unlock as well that you can pair up to also get into the phone fairly quickly. The screen on the Pixel 7a has been slightly upgraded. That's the first thing that's new on this phone. I already mentioned that it's the same size as last year, 6.1 inches. It's also the same resolution, 2400 by 1080 for around 429 pixels per inch. It's an OLED panel, which is great, and it's now a 90 Hz refresh rate display too. You'll want to go ahead and enable that in settings. It's under smooth display. It's not turned on by default for whatever reason, but when you switch that on, you're going to get that smoother, more fluid look and more responsive feel with all your taps and swipes. And the 90 Hz option brings this phone up to the same level as the likes of the Pixel 7 now. Both phones have the exact same display, but it still falls short of the Pixel 7 Pro and even Samsung's A54, which I think is this phone's closest competitor this year. Still, the viewing experience on the Pixel 7a is really quite good. It's a very sharp looking display since it's smaller with that higher pixel density. The colors look great, deep inky blacks, bold and punchy reds and yellows and blues and greens. You can make the switch between a natural color profile and adaptive color profile in settings for the display. I have it set to adaptive here. That's the default option, but I didn't notice a significant difference between the two. My only complaint just after using this phone for a little bit is that I wish it were brighter. You can see that there's still a ton of glare. This phone peaks out at about 1,000 nits in direct sunlight, and the user-controlled brightness is about half that. But besides that, I think this is a pretty solid viewing experience once again. The Pixel 7a also has a decent out loud listening experience too from its dual speaker setup. There's that bigger main speaker at the bottom, the secondary speaker hidden within the earpiece slit at the top. It gets pretty loud, which sacrifices the sound quality a little bit, but overall I think the phone sounds pretty good, and I'm not aware of any significant changes anyway. So when it comes to the internal specs and performance, like Google has done in years past, the Pixel 7a essentially gets what we got in the flagship Pixel 7, namely Google's own Tensor G2 chipset paired to the Mali G710 GPU, 8 gigs of RAM now, which is up from 6 on last year's phone, and a single storage option of 128 gigs. Here are the Geekbench 6 scores for this phone, which you can see are pretty much identical to the updated scores from the flagship Pixel 7. So like I said, we're essentially getting the same internal specs and power as the higher end device, which honestly is great. Flagship specs for $100 less. And obviously, one of the top reasons to consider this phone is Google's exceptional software experience and the exclusive features that go along with it, as well as 3 years of major updates, additional years of security patches, early access to the major Android versions before any other phone, and I did already have a minor software update waiting for me right out of the box. As far as the battery and charging, inside, this phone seems to have about the same size battery as last year, just shy of 4,400 milliamps. It now supports 20-watt wired charging instead of 18, which isn't much of a difference. The addition of wireless charging, though, like I mentioned, is great. No reverse wireless charging, though, or anything like that. And I look forward to putting this phone to the test in the coming days to see just how long it can last and how well Google's battery optimization features help me out as it starts to learn my usage patterns. But I've always found these Pixel A devices to be all-day devices and then some, and I suspect with the new G2 chipset inside and the software that this phone will end up being much of the same. The other major changes that came to the Pixel 7a are with the cameras. Both the rear setup and selfie shooter are basically all new. Around back, the main lens is now a 64 megapixel f1.9 aperture shooter paired to a slightly wider, slightly better 13 megapixel 120 degree ultra wide lens. The selfie camera has also been bumped up to a 13 megapixel f2.2 aperture lens, now with 4K video support. Inside the camera app, there aren't really any new standout shooting modes, features, or anything like that. You get your usual suite of Google camera stuff that you'd find across both the Pixel A's and the flagship counterparts. And as I think most people know by now, the camera really is one of the other big reasons why a person would specifically want a Pixel device. The flagship Pixel phones, especially the 7 Pro, always top the list of the best smartphone cameras. But the Pixel A devices aren't too far behind. I'm obviously going to have to do some real-world testing with this phone against the flagships, Samsung's A series, the iPhone, and more, but just from my first few pictures here, I can tell that this phone is once again an incredible picture taker, though still maybe a little short in detail and dynamic range compared to the flagships. I don't think that's a huge deal though. Like I said, if you're considering a Pixel device and pictures are your top priority, you're going to get one of the best overall camera setups via new hardware on this phone and Google's tried and true software. So what's new with the new Pixel 7a? Well, the 90Hz display, upgraded internals like the G2 chipset and 8 gigs of RAM, wireless charging, completely revamped camera hardware, quite a lot, honestly. This new Pixel 7a really received more updates and changes and new things than most phones do nowadays. You're really getting a lot with the new 7a. And I genuinely think this is once again not just one of the best value Android devices you can buy right now, but perhaps the best value smartphone overall.